Suggest. Great. Shall we start? Eva, can I give you the floor?
Absolutely, thank you. All right, welcome everybody to the second part of this evening, the symposium. We are so excited to have you all here, especially people who are coming in from different countries. It's one of the wonders of Zoom that we can all join together like this, and we're all really excited. We've had a symposium once before. Back then, we had the researchers Lilia Canerva, Oike Kanturk, and Laia Pickers presenting. And they presented on the effectiveness of the living library. They kind of researched how it works, if it works in actually combating prejudice. And Laia specifically looked at effectiveness in schools. This was back in 2023, and we were really excited to do it again. So today we once again have some really amazing researchers that are going to present their findings to you. It's really important to Living Library to have research backing up the method and the effectiveness, because, of course, we have a very clear goal in mind, doing what we do to combat prejudice, to help people learn more about certain topics that they maybe wouldn't otherwise learn about. So it's always really nice if there's someone willing to kind of see if and how we are achieving those goals. Today we have four people presenting. We have firstly Afreen Khalid on living libraries in the workplace. Then we have Julia Schreiber on the impact of living library on the living books, so the people sharing their story. Then we have Fani Giannakopoulou on bibliotherapy and the living library. And last but not least, we have our very own Martijn, and he will be sharing his research on why readers pick a certain book. The presenters will be presenting in order that I just mentioned, and they'll be presenting for around 8 to 10 minutes. Directly afterward, there will be some time for questions for our researchers, and afterwards, we'll have just some time to discuss some questions and some extra topics. So if you have a question, I'm actually not sure if Zoom also has this function of raising your hand. I don't see it, so I think it's best to then write it down in the chat and I will keep an eye on it. Oh, there it is. Raise your digital hand or write it down in the chat and we'll be sure to give you the floor if you have any questions for our researchers. All right, so before we begin, we will have Martijn also yeah, touching on what we do, and what we do, why what we do works. Martijn, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Eva, my name is Martijn. I'm coordinator and founder of Living Library in the Netherlands. And I would just like to say shortly what we do, because we have many guests here from many different countries. So maybe there are Living Library organizers, some books we have, some readers from different countries. So it's good, maybe just shortly what we understand by Living Library. And because I've been organizing Living Library for 11 years now. I started in Groningen, and we organize it in libraries or a festival or some kind of public place where everybody can come and then see on a screen or some kind of a board which books we have that day. And then you can click on this, or you can choose a certain book, and on the screen we can have a system where you can click on it to borrow that particular living book. You have 20 minutes together, optionally 10 minutes longer. We always make sure we read out loud the rules. And the most important thing is then that you can ask each other any question, but both also have the right not to answer a question. So like I said, 20 minutes, 10 minutes optionally longer. Volunteers keep track of the time. And what we nowadays also do, or actually already for a couple of years, is that we also go to companies and to schools. And then we work a little bit differently. Namely, then the conversations are in small groups of maximum 5 persons per group. and then there's a central introduction before. There will be the conversations, and in the end, we also have some kind of plenary conclusion with an evaluation form, some reactions from the participants. And what is always important to us is that we have always different kinds of books. So we have somebody who is dealing with autism, somebody who is transgender, and somebody who is maybe ex-addicted. So that translate to different genres, as we call it, surrounding backgrounds, maybe religion, health situation, ethnic background, gender, sexuality. So we have many different types of topics always present. All right, I think that's it for me. Just warm welcome to everybody here. Thank you very much. Back to you, Eva.
Thank you very much. Then I would like to welcome our first researcher, Afreen Khalid. If you're ready, you can share your presentation. And
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay?
yes,
All
we
right,
can.
great. I'm gonna share my screen in a minute. See. So if it's good, you should be able to see the presentation.
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Afreen. I'm a PhD candidate at Radboud University, and I'm going to be talking about some work I did studying the effectiveness of the living library in reducing prejudice. So part of this project was actually a continuation of the work that OQ did before. She talked about it in the previous symposium. I will summarize some of her findings as well and present some further research that we did in this line. So despite the progress we've made in the past decades towards achieving equality, prejudice is still a huge issue, and marginalized groups face its consequences in their everyday lives, from not being hired for certain positions to poorer mental and physical health. And to tackle these issues, we need evidence-based strategies that can help reduce prejudice. So just to give you some quick background on this research area, there's quite some research on interventions to reduce prejudice. And the technique that is seen as the gold standard is intergroup contact, which means bringing people from different groups in contact with each other. However, most research on intergroup contact relies on lab studies. These are studies done in artificial, typically university contexts, and field research in the real world that is very scarce, especially research that looks at long-term measures beyond just the immediate context of the intervention. So the Living Library is actually an example of a contact intervention, and it's currently actively being used in several countries, and some of you have already experienced it just now, and you can tell that it's a high-quality method, a brief but high-quality method of bringing people into contact with each other. Martijn just very clearly explained how it goes, so I won't spend a lot of time on this part, but what typically happens in a public library setting is that there's a registration desk and there's a list of books on the screen like this, and participants can come to this desk, select a book, and then have a conversation, a one-on-one, typically in library settings and in groups and organizational settings. So just to summarize some existing research on the Living Library, there is some existing research, but there are some key questions, and this research also has some shortcomings. So prior research shows that it does reduce prejudice, but some findings suggest that effects are mixed, with the intervention being effective towards certain groups, but not others. Prior research also has not really measured prejudice or attitudes beyond the immediate context. So they only look at attitudes immediately after the intervention, which makes it unclear how long the effects of this intervention last. And prior research on the Living Library has also not really looked into what the underlying mechanisms of change are. So we don't really know what it is that what drives the effects of the living library. And what comes up in contact literature is intergroup anxiety. So people have reduced anxiety after having contact with an outgroup member. And this is likely also what happens in the living library, but this hasn't really been investigated yet. And lastly, most studies have been done in university samples or in public library settings. And this can lead to self-selection biases. So that means that the people who participate are already people who are kind of motivated to change their attitudes. So it's unclear whether how effective this intervention would be among groups that are less motivated to change their attitudes. So this is some of what we try to accomplish in our current project. We have measurements beyond the immediate context. So about a week later, we test the living libraries in 9 different organizations where participants were often mandated to attend by their companies. In addition, we have a broad range of living books or target groups that readers could select from. And we also look at process measures beyond just attitudes. So we also look at things like intergroup anxiety. So we did 2 studies in this project so far. The first study was more of a pilot investigation of the living library in the Dutch public library context. This is the study that we did with the help of OQ. And then the second study, we did a more systematic test of the living library in organizational settings with a larger sample size. And this is more or less what the design of the studies looked like. So there were slight differences between studies, but we have 3 time points across both studies. So participants filled in a questionnaire at T1 before they had the conversation at T2, right after they had the conversation, and then a week later, they were emailed the questionnaire again to fill it out at T3. So let's go to study 1 in a bit more detail. So I'd like to explain this design a little more because it's a slightly non-traditional design. It was done at public libraries where people first came to the registration desk, and if they were interested in participating, they were split into a precondition or post-condition. And then people in the precondition first filled out the questionnaire and then had the conversation, whereas people in the post-condition first had the conversation and then filled out the questionnaire. After a week delay, both groups filled out the questionnaire again. There were 79 participants in total for our first study, with 29 in the precondition and 50 in the post-condition. We lost quite a few participants for the follow-up measures, despite reminders, but there were still 29 in total. We measured quite a few things, but I will mostly talk about attitudes and intergroup anxiety in this presentation as they were our most important variables. And this is what we found. We found that participants in the precondition had less positive attitudes towards the social group compared to participants in the postcondition. So this means that people who filled out the questionnaire after they had a conversation with the living book had significantly more positive attitudes compared to those who filled out the questionnaire before they had the conversation. And we have found a similar pattern for anxiety. So people had lower anxiety after they had a conversation with the book. We also found effects at follow-up. So a week later, participants still had more positive attitudes compared to their pretest scores, and also lower anxiety compared to their pretest scores. So overall, we find initial evidence of the living library's effectiveness. However, we also wanted to do this with a larger sample size and in a different context, and that is what we do in study 2. In study 1, participants were people who had voluntarily chosen to participate, And in study 2, we wanted to look at people who were also mandated to attend this event by their organization to see if the intervention would also be effective for them. So this was our sample size. We had quite a few more people, and this was more of a traditional pre-post follow-up design where you follow the same participants across 3 time points. And we had a variety of different organizations. We had the same measures as in study 2, but we also additionally asked participants whether they participated voluntarily or if they were required to attend by their organization. And we find, again, a similar pattern in study 2, where we, after the conversation with the living book, participants had more positive attitudes compared to their pretest scores. These effects persist even at follow-up, which is a week later. So at follow-up, people still had more positive attitudes compared to their pretest scores. And we see a similar pattern for anxiety. So anxiety reduces and it remains lower at follow-up compared to their pretest scores. We also looked at whether participation type matters. So if the intervention was also effective for people who were mandated to attend, and this was indeed the case. So even for people who were mandated to attend, they had significantly more positive attitudes at post-test compared to their pre-test scores. So taken together, it seems that the living library is effective beyond the immediate context. So even a week later, it's effective even in organizational contexts with participants who are mandated to attend the event. Our study included multiple target groups or book titles. So the results speak to the intervention's effectiveness across a broad range of groups. And we also show that anxiety is reduced following the intervention. However, a larger sample size would be needed to properly test these mediation effects. That was all from me. I'd like to thank all my collaborators for their valuable feedback on this, and I'd be happy to hear any questions you have.
All right, thank you so much. Does anyone have a question for Afreen?
I'm John. I have a brief question.
Sure.
Afreen, did you measure the threat as well?
Threat as in distinct from intergroup anxiety?
Yeah, or did you connect with that?
We didn't measure threat, no, but I think that's an interesting point. I think it would be very much similar to what we see in the pattern for intergroup anxiety.
Yeah, they would be probably lowered as well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
indeed. I think there's another question from Nico.
Thank you. I'm very much interested more in the methodology. So how you measure this, were these direct questions, whether you feel, let's say, less relaxed or
Yeah, they were direct self-report questions. So
because I think that can create problems. I mean,
yeah, yeah, you're right. There are problems with self-reports, and this is a
yes.
like commonly discussed issue in psychological research, that it can lead to yeah, demand effects that people respond in the way you think they want to respond. But in our first study, we had kind of an interesting design where participants filled out a pre-test even before they had a conversation. So I think the fact that we see positive results there too speaks that this is not just demand effects that are happening.
Yes, but another issue might be the relatively low number of participants. So again,
Yeah.
I mean, it is really very interesting and exciting, and I'm not wiser at this point what else could be done to make it more kind of objective, so to say, or the findings uh, less, how to say it, so give less space for biases to when answering these questions, but it is really exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, does anyone else have a question?
Maybe I can ask a question. What do you understand by anxiety? This is sometimes a little bit of a problematic word. Maybe what is your kind of a definition? How do you understand it?
Yeah, I think the research on intergroup contact defines anxiety as indeed this feeling of threat that you feel, or it's like the opposite of feeling relaxed around an individual, because the measures that we have ask people how relaxed would you feel around a member of the social group, and that is typically how anxiety is measured. It's measured also in a lot of other ways. Physiological measures measure arousal. So it is related to all these concepts of threat and discomfort, and lack of ease. I don't know if that sufficiently answers your question, but
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. There will be some time afterwards if anyone has any more questions, but for now, we will go on to Julia Schreiber, and she will talk about the effect of attending a living library on the books. Take it away.
Can you see my slides already?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. Hi, I'm Julia. I'm from the University of Sussex, and I'm also currently a PhD candidate. And I will talk a little bit about the experiences of the living books today during the Living Library. And I feel really honored because I know that a lot of books are here today as well. And I usually don't have the chance of to present to the people that actually maybe also contributed to this work. So I'm very curious to hear what you have to say. I'm not a book myself, and it's the first time today that I was a reader as well. So my results or my analysis comes more as an outsider of the Living Library. So I'm curious to see what you all have to say. A very special thanks to all my collaborators as well that made this project possible, especially Martijn, who decided to collaborate with us, and also Martin, who is here today as well and did half of the analysis that I will analyze today, will present today. Okay. Oops. Why? No. Okay, so I already speculated that Afreen will do a good job in explaining what we already know about the Living Library and how intergroup contact works. So I will keep it very short from what we know from the literature. So as Afreen already said, we already know that the Living Library can reduce prejudice and foster trust and even create solidarity among advantaged groups for stigmatized groups. However, we know much less about how actually this experience is for the stigmatized groups, so for the living books themselves. We know that it also can increase their trust towards advantaged groups members and also foster positive attitudes towards them. And we know a little bit about that it might increase their well-being. But apart from that, we don't know that many. And I basically wanted to start the project because I was wondering actually if there's any other benefits for the books themselves, apart from them maybe being able to contribute to prejudice reduction, but does it maybe empower them in any other way? Or is it actually more, could it be draining for them or exhausting for them to tell their story over and over again? So I asked several questions, but the two I want to focus on today is what kind of changes do living books experience through the Living Library, and what might be facilitators for living books to actually have these positive experiences that lead to positive outcomes. Okay, so we run a survey. I unfortunately didn't have time to do in-depth interviews, but we run a survey where 117 living books participated and was a mixed methods design. So I asked some closed-ended questions, but mainly open-ended questions. So a lot of questions where books could actually just write a text where they elaborated on their experiences. And we got actually a lot of data. So people wrote a lot of text and it was very touching. And I will share some citations of this today. Yeah, so I'm very grateful for that. As you can see, we have had books from all different kinds of backgrounds, from sexuality, LGBTQ, race, physical disabilities, mental health, neurodivergency, and so on. And also, as Martijn explained before, there are different formats where living books can be part of. So some are more public libraries and festivals. So most of the books participated in this program, but we also have people that are either represented in schools and companies. And this might be actually relevant later when I'm talking about the results, because I saw some interesting findings related to these different formats. Okay, so let's start with the outcomes first. So I first just ask a question on different emotions that living books might feel after most of their living library sessions, because I really wanted to know if there is positive emotions that they feel, or if it's more draining, as I said. And as you can see, so I distributed them in like clusters of emotions. So the green ones are the positive outcomes on interpersonal level. So how do people feel in relation to the out group or the advantage groups that they talk to? So something like, as you can see, most of the times books feel more included, respected, accepted, and appreciated, and more seen, which is really nice. And on the other hand, we can't only see also these like appreciative emotions, but also emotions that are more empowering towards the self. So people feel empowered, happy, energized, motivated, and so on. We see that in general, the negative emotions after the living library are very not that frequent, which I think is also nice to see, apart from the exhaustion, which is kind of moderate. So it might be interesting to actually, I've not looked into if certain groups are more exhausted than others, but it might be interesting to see what actually leads to this exhaustion and if there is ways to actually support living books to not feel that. Okay. So I asked two questions. So the first was if the living library changed the living books in any way, and if so, in what way they were changed. So to start, no one really talked about any negative transformations, so they didn't exist. Around 25% of books said they actually didn't have any transformations through the living library, but they just have a lot of positive outcomes associated with it. So something like I just mentioned, like positive emotions or feeling a sense of community and so on. But the other half mentioned, or the other 75% mentioned a lot of positive transformations in relation to a personal empowerment and well-being, but also in the sense of how much they feel they can contribute to social change. So I will focus now on the personal empowerment and well-being outcomes that books reported. So one of the things that books regularly discussed was like through the experiences of the living library, they actually feel like it's easier, better for them to express their own stories. And that can be through better conversational skills. So that was something like it is easier to keep they learn how to keep a conversation easier going, or they learn how to better tell their story so people actually understand what they try to express, or yeah, for example, it has helped me to express myself better. But it's also things like it increased their confidence also in talking about this. So they are more to share vulnerable things with others. So there is some kind of empowerment in how people, how the living books feel like they can be in sharing their stories. Yeah, then another positive transformation or outcome is the positive emotions. I will not really focus on this because I just went into this. So it's about joy and happiness, but also books feeling seen even beyond their stigmatized label. So they're getting kind of humanized and seen as a human, not just as their book title. And they feel seen and acknowledged. Yeah, more belonging and trust. So I think that's what I mentioned before. That is the one thing that is regularly discussed or mostly discussed in the literature, is that books feel more belonging and trust in others. So in the advantaged group, also in the society. So for example, telling your story and answering questions gives you the feeling that you belong. This has increased my trust in humanity somewhat. Others reported that it's actually a therapeutic experience for them, of regularly talking to others. So it was more about like that when you share your story a lot, that it decreases the pain of telling the story, but it can also help the books to actually process their experiences and learning new aspects of maybe how to deal with their story or how to see it in a different light. So things that books shared, for example, is sharing your story is in a way, this way with strangers is therapeutic. Telling the story more often has made it increasingly less painful for me. And related to this, what I just mentioned is that a lot of books actually mentioned that they understand or discover new aspects or facets of themselves or about how to see the world. And I think that relates somehow to feeling that there is a therapeutic experience, but it also shows like in the way that people ask questions. They mention a lot that especially diverse questions help them to maybe discover things that they have never thought of before in their identities or in their experiences. So it's kind of a learning process for the books as well, and not just for the reader. On the other hand, so I just shared some personal empowerment. On the other hand, these conversations can lead to empowerment related to social change. So that is most people actually, I will have less sub-themes here to share, but most people actually talked about these experiences and changes within them, which makes sense because in the end, we want to create a change in society by reducing prejudice. So a lot of books mention that they actually feel like empowered and that they feel that they're contributing positively to society. So in a way that they, for example, help with understanding or creating empathy for their group. So sharing your story can bring understanding and empathy. Or I really feel like I'm contributing to society outside my friends and family. So related to this is, since they feel like they have some agency and they can actually change something and contribute positively to society, it actually motivates a lot of books to want to do more. So either to talk to more people, to educate them more and reduce prejudice further, or in other ways by improving their group's standing in society. So they said things like, I want to do more to increase understanding for transgenders and non-binary people, or I see how many people are ignorant and I can give them information and engage in conversation. And then one thing that is actually not related to reducing prejudice of the advantage group was that a lot of people also mentioned that they just see that they can also help and empower other stigmatized groups or other people with the same identities. So either with helping them in like how they can cope with it. Obviously, there's people with different identities or with the same identities also in different stages of their journey. Like some might still struggle with even knowing where, if they have a certain identity or not. So it can really be also somehow a peer support rather than just a prejudice reduction tool. One thing that someone said was, for example, I talked to two women and a girl with autism. I really felt like I had a positive influence on this, and this was a person that had autism themselves. Okay, from there, I wanted to learn more about actually what might be the external or what would happen, needs to happen during a conversation to actually have these positive impacts or this empowerment for books. So one thing that I regularly saw that people talked about when they talked about their positive experiences was actually that the living library creates a safe space and what we would call like a psychological safety space because it gives some visible security cues. So books mention a lot that they actually know from because people have signed up and show that they have interest, that they feel more comfortable sharing because they know that people want to learn from the book. Because of the rules that everyone that participated today in the Living Library has heard, it's also a lot about positive, harmonious atmosphere, showing respect during the conversations, being treated as equal, all of these kind of things. So that is the setup basically that the Living Library gives. So apart from this, a lot of things, and that was actually something that surprised me a lot, because when you think about a living library, my perception was, okay, readers come, they ask books questions and so on. So a very unidirectional way of learning from each other. But what I realized, what books mentioned a lot, what actually makes the experience positive is like this bidirectional conversations of sharing and learning from each other. So basically through these shared stories that they have. So it was either people with the same identity sharing similar stories and with this kind of building trust and connection, and books could feel some relation that they're related, but also they just felt seen and recognized for the injustice or the suffering. So it was usually a really positive process for them because obviously they don't have to explain everything from the beginning, but can directly dive into deeper conversations. But it was not only in-group members sharing it, but also when, for example, when people had close relatives or close other people with the identities sharing these stories because they could connect over these stories. Yeah, and it was also about showing vulnerability. So it's not only the book showing vulnerability, but also the reader, which just created a stronger connection and also more trust between the people. So readers who share their feelings, vulnerabilities, and doubt, and dare to share them. Or the recognition of one of the readers, a man who fled his country and also lost his family in the process. He felt it was not the same for me, but it was the poor recognition. So even if it's not always the same experiences, it's more about having similar stories and connecting and seeing each other. And then another
All right,
aspect,
sorry, Julia. I am
yes,
gonna ask you to wrap it up because I can tell we're kind of
okay, no problem.
yeah, running a little bit over schedule here. If it's all right with you, can you quickly wrap up your final most important point, and then we have time for one quick question, because otherwise we'll get in a time crunch.
Yeah, okay, and no worries.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was more about also different groups coming together. So I was talking, it's about different generations talking to each other, and because of the different backgrounds, basically having a diversity of question and learning from each other, which books really appreciate as well. I will skip that part. The last part was basically just about seeing actually value and impact in sharing your experience and perspective. So it's more about having a tangible impact of like people changing their perspectives or mentioning that they want to help and so on, or sharing it with a wider audience, like the police, teachers, and so on. Yeah, so basically, what I was trying to show here with all these different findings is that the Living Library is not just a program for prejudice reduction, but also for empowerment of the individual and personal growth for the living books, but also a way to build actually and strengthen community and peer support and give people who already might care about people with a certain stigmatized groups the tool to actually act. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Julia. It's way too much information to fit into 10 seconds for sure, 10 minutes for sure. All right, we have time for one question for Julia before we go on to our next researcher, but there will be some time after if you have more questions. Is there anyone who would like to ask Julia something? I see a lot of hand claps and Max,
can I
sorry.
ask one thing about, because you talked about positive and negative emotions. Were those headings that you gave to the emotions or to the things?
Yeah, so it's still preliminary results. So I just gave it these labels for the presentation right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, you could call them maybe differently or even discuss if negative emotions are necessarily always negative, right?
Yeah, no, I think I am also a book and I'm used to talking about myself. And I think for a lot of people, like exhaustion is just a normal part and it's not really negative, but it's just I am exhausted and satisfied about how everything happened. So that might be something to take into account with that part, that it takes a lot of energy, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Thank you for pointing that out. I also saw, I didn't mention it here because it's a little bit more about statistics, but actually the exhaustion part loaded similarly with the positive emotions. And I was wondering about why that is the case, but that might explain it actually, because it goes hand in hand, kind of. That's what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah. And for the rest, very interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Martin, if it's all right with you, could you hang on to your question until after the other researchers are done?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you so much, Julia. Up next, we have Fani, and she will be talking about bibliotherapy. Take it away, Fani.
I guess you can see the PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect, and you can hear me? Good. So good evening, everyone. I'm so happy being here. My name is Fani Giannakopoulou. I'm also a PhD researcher in the University of West Attica. And today we will explore here how bibliotherapy and living library complement each other, creating meaningful opportunities for reflection, empathy, and dialogue. Okay. So libraries have historically served as places where people seek knowledge, but today the role expands to nurturing emotional development and social connection. Stories help us process complex experiences and emotions. In my work, I study bibliotherapy, how bibliotherapy supports healing, and how librarians can foster transformative learning, reflection, and relational understanding. So, what is bibliotherapy? Actually, it's we would say a structured use of literature to support emotional, cognitive, and psychological well-being. So, through fiction, poetry, memoir, and metaphors, participants explore themes such as identity, resilience, belonging, grief, change, and much, much more. Bibliotherapy may be developmental, creative, clinical, or community-based, but across forms, its foundation remains grounded in narrative reflection and meaning-making. A bit of history. So the idea that reading can support emotional healing has deep historical roots. In ancient Greece, the Asclepia healing temples incorporated stories, theater, and myth as forms of psychological relief and catharsis. Centuries later, we have some inscriptions like the Healing of the Soul Library. You can see it in the first picture, it's Greek. That's why maybe you cannot understand, which expressed the idea that books could nurture inner well-being. By the late 18th and 19th century, authors like Jane Austen helped shape literature as a space for emotional reflection and identity development. And this set foundation for the early 20th century, when World War I and II hospital libraries formally used reading to support wounded soldiers, transforming reading into a structured therapeutic practice. So today, bibliotherapy has evolved into an evidence-based interdisciplinary field with applications in clinical care, education, community well-being, and library practice, continuing the timeless recognition that stories can guide, comfort, and heal. A bit for Living Library. So the Living Library has also deep narrative ancestry, from oral storytelling in the ancient agora to Renaissance salons to community storytelling circles. Human stories have always transmitted knowledge, empathy, and cultural memory. And the contemporary Living Library, which was first called Human Library in the 20s, movement focuses on reducing stigma and breaking stereotypes through respectful, time-bound dialogue with people whose lived experiences and become the books, as we call them in Living Library. So why bibliotherapy aligns naturally with Living Library? Why these two practices actually belong together? So when we bring bibliotherapy and the Living Library together, we create a bridge between symbolic storytelling and embodied storytelling, and continuum where meaning is not only read or imagined, but also witnessed, shared, and co-constructed. Bibliotherapy, on the one hand, let's say, offers a reflective internal process. The book becomes a safe symbolic space where readers can explore identity, emotions, and struggle at a comfortable emotional distance. Characters carry questions we may not yet be able to voice ourselves. In that space, people can experiment psychologically, imagining possibilities before actually living them. The Living Library shifts the process into relational encounter. Instead of turning pages, the listener turns toward a person. So the story has breadth, eye contact, pauses, tone, and emotional nuance. Meaning emerges not in isolation, but in dialogue, in the interpersonal space between storyteller and the listener. So even though the two formats differ, they rely on similar mechanisms, let's say. So what I say here, the mirror effect it's called identification in bibliotherapy. So the listener or reader recognizes themselves in the narrative somewhere. And then we have the window effect, or I just project, or differently projection. The story becomes a safe container for difficult or complex emotions. Then is the catharsis, the resonance effect. Emotional release or insight emerges through connection with the narrative. Perspective taking, assumption soften and understanding expands. And integration, the narrative becomes part of a new understanding of self and the others. So, what its method adds to another. Bibliotherapy contributes structure, symbolism, reflection, and emotional scaffolding. The living library contributes embodiment, immediacy, emotional resonance, and lived diversity. When practiced together, they reinforce and expand one another. Reflection supports empathy, and empathy deepens reflection. Potential applications. So, well, these combined approaches can support inclusion programs, migrant and refugee integration initiatives, adolescent psychological development, mental health well-being initiatives, university orientation activities, and hybrid reading clubs, and much more possibly. They are especially meaningful in environments where emotional safety and diversity really must coexist. And combined outcomes. So enhanced empathy through direct human stories and reflective technology. Deeper emotional insight and understanding of personal responses, safe exploration of identity. But what I want also here to underline, which is also in my case important, is that libraries are now supportive, healing cultural spaces indeed. Conclusion. To conclude, stories heal, whether written or spoken. When bibliotherapy meets the living library, storytelling becomes more than information exchange. It becomes human bridge, connecting perspectives, identities, and lived words, much, much more than before. In this way, libraries evolve not only as spaces of knowledge, but as a space of belonging, healing, and relational understanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Very well
I hope
done.
I
Very
was on time.
interesting.
Really hope.
You did fine. It's all right. Does anyone have any questions for Fani? Go ahead.
I know I don't have results yet, but the next symposium I will. I promise.
Hi. Oh, sorry.
Let's see. Tanguy?
Yes, Fungi.
Tanguy.
Yes, how important is it when you are a living book? In order to have impact, you need to need and no. Do you need to know why you are telling your story to have an impact in or to contribute to change in society? Is it a main purpose, or is it something it happens? It just happens.
Is this a question?
Yes, that's a question, maybe a complex question.
No. So actually your question is if what I'm describing is already happening?
Yes, is it by a purpose you need to?
So yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I got your point. So it's my proposal, something I will do this year. I will, but for now is as you saw in a theoretical basis. That's why I said that next time we will be here together, we'll have results. I haven't done it yet, but this is for now is just my idea and my proposal. Yeah.
Right.
All right. I think Akimi, you had a question?
Yeah, but I'm afraid to ask.
For me, no, don't afraid. I'm not afraid.
Okay. No, I'm afraid it's too impulsive and I have ADHD, so I tend to be impulsive. But I was thinking about this idea. So
every time after. So what if you have like this conversation with a living book, and it often happens like in a group setting, right? And there would be a spreadsheet or some summary afterwards given to you. And I'm not sure how we could like achieve this, but I was thinking about AI, like hearing this conversation and just bundle it in some sort of summary. Then you have like the combination of a written text about the conversation that just happened. So people can go to their home and read about the conversation they just had with their book. Is that a weird idea?
I've never thought about it. It's really interesting, I would say. I would never thought about it, to be honest, never. Um, sometimes we don't focus in asking things the other person. Maybe we focus in other things like connecting. Maybe I'm mostly talking about myself, but I think also others do that. Oh, but sometimes we are also curious. We ask all the things we have asked. But always we can have extra information about something, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we can read after or before or come again. I don't know. But
Funny. A lot of I see a lot of reactions in the chat.
it was a really interesting point. Your point, for sure. You see what's happening? Yeah.
No, not for so why do you need a summary for research? No, just for the reader to actually like sort of implement what just happened or what you were just talking about.
Maybe it would be helpful. I really don't know. I would never do that, to be honest. I will never put AI to this thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. I don't know. And
No,
I accept
I
it.
know that a lot of people are very critical of AI. It's just that, okay, how do you like record a conversation and immediately made like a summary out of that? Like, I don't know how something can do that fast. So that's why I was thinking about AI.
That's true. That's completely true, actually. Yep.
All right, thank you. We have time for one more question, Vera.
Hi, thank you. I'm really curious about the ways to integrate bibliotherapy and the living library, because we had one small pilot program where we tried to do that, and we were not very happy with the results. We couldn't feel that the two parts really work together. So I'm really interested in maybe later you can present the exact ways to integrate those two methods.
I would like to ask you what you did. We don't have time here. It's not the place. But what I can say for now, my idea is not only just to include books with the living library. That's it. It's more complicated than that. Not a lot, more complicated, just more structured, let's say, not complicated. Yeah, but maybe next time. Yep.
Yeah, I would be very happy to share our methodology with you, what we tried and how it did.
Yes, I would love
If you're
to.
interested.
We
Yes.
can definitely get you guys in contact.
Yeah, we will do.
sure.
Not now, Eva. Don't worry.
Yeah.
No, that's all right. Yeah, for sure. Thank you, guys. All right, thank you so much. Up next, we have Martijn.
Yes, thank you. I'll also share my screen. Here we go. Yes, so again, I have to allow something. So again, my name is Martijn. I'm coordinator of Living Library in the Netherlands. And I would like to talk with you shortly about why do readers pick a certain book. So I'm not a researcher, to be clear. I'm more of the organizer, actually doing it now for 11 years, but okay. So recently I improved the program that we always use. When people enter a library, they usually see this screen now first with the titles, an option to borrow a certain book, and then we ask readers, no, people, visitors of the library who are coming by, would you like to borrow a living book today? So some people come specifically for the Living Library because they saw it on the website or to our communication channels. They heard that there's a certain cool event going on and they're coming to the Living Library. But many people, we also try to surprise them with a living book and with a conversation that they might not expect. So they see this, and many of them, they will tell me, "Oh, I'm actually busy. Oh, I'm actually, I'm coming here to read a paper book, and later I still have to do some groceries." And many times, what is behind it is, of course, that they are a little bit scared to borrow a certain book or a certain person that they don't know what's exactly going to happen. So usually I also show them already the living books who are sitting there a little bit further to say that, yeah, you can have a conversation with Henk, for example, and Henk is sitting there, so to reduce that anxiety already before you actually start to borrow a living book. And you can also imagine yourself experiencing or seeing this screen. Yeah, which book are you going to borrow? Are you going to borrow a book? Because it is a little bit scary for many people. And what I heard is that some people say you only can reach people who are already into these topics. So that you borrow a certain title that you can see here because you have some kind of familiarity with it, or you're already very positive about it, maybe. You're already into it, as they then say, with kind of a negative connotation. That people say, like, yeah, you don't really reach the people you want to reach. So I really wanted to do a little research about that, basically by asking people in the evaluation form, which they fill out after they had a conversation, why did you borrow this book, basically? Also in connection with the research findings of Lilia Canerva, she presented also her thesis, her master thesis from gender studies the last time during the first symposium. She encouraged readers, she said we should encourage readers to choose a book they are not familiar with to have the highest results regarding prejudice reduction. However, she also said that when people choose a book that they are familiar with, either themselves or that they know somebody who is dealing with that certain topic, that there are feelings of peer support and connectedness, which is then also very positive, that they can share experiences and help each other in some sense. Anyway, I was very curious, what are the motivations of readers to choose a particular book? And there are a couple of options they could choose from. So this was the question, why did you choose that book? I did not know much about it and I wanted to learn more. I already knew quite a lot about it, but I wanted to speak with someone. I have personal experience with this topic and I wanted to learn more. I know somebody who deals with this topic and I wanted to learn more. Different, so it was open, people could fill out what they wanted. And the last option here is random. It was simply available or somebody recommended it to me and I just went with it. And that somebody is then usually the librarian or somebody from the Living Library, a volunteer, who is then saying, choose this book, it's good for you. Just sometimes we say that, but it's kind of random. Just usually also, again, somebody who is available. So I'm proposing a small quiz now because there's here in the middle some space for percentages. So this first option that I would like to ask you to go to the chat and tell me the percentage to the question, like how many people said this. I did not know much about it and I wanted to learn more. And to make it very exciting, the one who is the closest to the actual number will get a Living Library keychain. So this is a very special prize if you are abroad. If you are one of our participants from South Africa, I will send it to you. And otherwise, it will also, to the Dutch people, I can give it to you at the next Living Library. So I cannot see actually the chat.
I
Let me
can.
see.
So,
Maybe you can tell me some numbers. What do you see, Eva?
all right, I'm seeing all kinds of numbers. I'm seeing 80, I'm seeing 3.5, a lot of tens, 58, 30, 45, 25, 20, 30, 15, 25, 28.
All right. I already briefly showed it by accident, but here we go. It's actually 47%. So it's the number surprised me personally quite a bit. That it's I thought it was quite high.
Good
I
job,
already
Gijs. You got it exactly right.
Yeah, but I showed it. So Gijs, I don't trust Gijs to be honest. But I
Well,
will
actually, I
continue.
didn't see it, so,
Oh, you
but
did? Oh my
no,
God.
no.
Very good, very good. All right, you have won the prize of the official Living Library keychain. Alrighty. All right. I already knew quite a lot, but I wanted to speak with someone. 16%. I have personal experience with this topic and I wanted to learn more. 18%. I know somebody who deals with this topic and I wanted to learn more. 13%. Different. 3%. And this random last one, also 3%. So I put it here in a chart to visualize it also. And then you can see that almost half did not know so much about it. And then you can see the blue and the green about being basically about the peer support, that you know somebody or that you have personal experience and that it's interesting then to talk about it with somebody. Yeah. All right. Maybe somebody has some questions about this. Maybe I can open the floor. Does anybody have any question or comment about this?
I do have a question.
Tell me.
I just didn't find now how to raise my hand. Whether you inquired about so was it whether the first time the person used the living library or has already been familiar with it, because that also might have an influence. So if it is the very first time, perhaps they are needing to select something which they are more familiar with, not really knowing what they can expect. But after the first couple of experiences, they become braver. It's just a guess. I wonder
Yeah.
whether you have some insight in it.
Yeah, I do recognize that people sometimes choose maybe sometimes first something they are familiar with, and the second book could be something more brave, so to say. But it has been filled out after every conversation, basically. So not only first timers, but it's very interesting. I never thought about that, but it really makes sense to take that into consideration. Thank you.
I also have a question. Oh, sorry.
No, please go ahead. It's okay.
Yeah. So Martijn, I think this is a super interesting figure. It's also a question that I was wondering about for a long time already. And so do you also have, and maybe you're presenting it later, but do you have numbers of the books that have been chosen? Because I can see that this is an argument for people to either select one book over another, but are there particular books more often chosen than others?
No, I have this data actually, but I never thought about this connection to split it basically between certain books, maybe between certain genres even. This could be checked later because I have this data.
Yeah, because so one thing that you said, well, is maybe some people feel some anxiety, and if I can stimulate them to talk to a book, then anxiety is already reduced before having a conversation. And from a lot of studies, we know that people tend to avoid groups that they typically have negative associations with. So it could be that they have chosen a book that is still on the safe side for them. And then this rationalization is still, I did not know much about this book and I wanted to learn more, which is perfectly true, but it's maybe not the book that needs the most attention for this particular person.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, we do. I think it's still the advice from Lilia Canerva is still very valid, I guess, that when people are coming at our desk and they are looking a little bit, that we can ask them, what book would you like? Or can I recommend one to you? And can I recommend you to choose something that you feel a little bit scared for? Then maybe choose that book because it could be the most interesting for you.
Yeah.
So just to push them a little bit and just to say like, choose discomfort, basically.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. Thanks.
All right. I have one more slide actually. I would like to point out for our international organizers of living libraries that we have made a handbook how to organize a living library for employees. So basically in companies and in organizations. And we work together at this international project with our organizer colleagues from Spain and from Hungary. And you can check our website to download this manual actually. And that is it, I think, for now. I see that Yara raised a hand. Maybe Yara?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, my video isn't on. Thank you so much for the presentation. I just had one question. Sorry, this might be coming out of misunderstandings from me. I'm new to the Living Library. This is my first time here. I just learned about it. But from the stats that you showed, or from, what you showed, I'm wondering, I might be misunderstanding prejudice reduction, but if the purpose is prejudice reduction, I mean, the 47% showed people who want to learn about this and they don't know about this. As far as, the way I see it, wanting to learn about something, is that necessarily the same as feeling, prejudice towards that person? Would that not be kind of people who already have negative attitudes who are willing to learn differently rather than learn more because they don't know? And so I'm wondering where kind of we're seeing the prejudice reduction in kind of that intervention within the Living Library.
If you don't mind, I might ask Afreen to answer this question, if you like, Afreen.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question, and actually one that we try to address in our project because we specifically in our second study looked at people who were mandated to attend this event. So these were employees in organization who, as a part of a diversity training within their company, were asked to attend this event by their organization. And even for these people, we find positive effects. You're right that for people who are already super interested in the books, it might not this might not be the most useful group to target in society, but even for these people, we see reductions or more positive attitudes towards social groups. So it does seem to work for a wide variety of groups, but it is also true that most of the living library that is organized in public library settings does target people who volunteer. But yeah, from what we see, it's effective across a broad range of people.
Thank you.
Julia, you had your hand raised?
I just thought I might want to share as well that although some people might already be positive towards the group, I still feel like from the data that I read that still sometimes people feel lost in how they can help or create change. So I think it might still be valuable for these people to have these conversations as well to actually create some change, because sometimes that can push people to finally act.
Beautiful addition, thank you. All right. So we've come to the official end of this symposium. But if you are all willing, then we can stick around a bit longer if there are any more questions. Until then, though, I really want to thank everybody who attended. Of course, our amazing researchers, presenting their research. It's not easy to fit all that information in so little time, so hats off to you guys. Really well done. Thank you all for being here, for listening. And if you have any more questions, comments, or